It'll be that quick and fun, but I'm going to just do another intro. So hold on 1 second, then we'll get to the paper. Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette. This is 195, where we read and review philosophy papers live on internet. I have not read these before, and you can join me in the chat and we can read them together. So let's see. I just looked at some papers, and this is the new stuff today on September 12th, 2020. We've just read Algorithmic Bias, Should Students Pay the Price in Philosophy Roulette 194. Go check that out if you are interested in hearing about sort of how students in the UK paid for their government just assuming that plugging their grades into like some black box was going to work. And so now we got two other papers. We got the Aporia of Future Directed Beliefs and then Argument Against Causal Decision Theory. And I always like it when all the papers are there because they are. You can see we got this one, Aporia of Future Directed Beliefs and Causal Decision Theory. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip a coin unless chat has a preference. Heads is Aporia, and tails is the other one. And we've got, well, what are we calling this? We're calling this heads? Yeah, so that's heads. So we're doing Aporia Future Directed Beliefs in Acta Analytica. And I'll leave the analysis paper for later. So, there we go. Download save file. If you want the link and you're here live, here's the link, and if you come later, you can always type !paper if the link isn't sitting right there, and the link will pop back up. So. Cool. So, introduction. Oh gosh, is Acta Analytic. Let's go see if there's like a million formulas in this. If there's too many formulas, I'm not going to read it. Oh no! What do we got? Yeah. All right. This was I spoke too soon. You know what? I'm going to read it anyway. This looks like mostly one or two proofs, and I have no interest. I won't read it. I'll skip them, but you know what? That's fine. Okay. Because I can't sit there reading like box, existential, like open parentheses, f of x implies g of x, close parentheses, yeah, so, anywho, I'm going to do it anyway. One, introduction. Consider the following set of propositions. It is possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. What does that mean, the future that is not historically settled? I don't know. We'll find out. 2. It is necessary that someone is infallible if and only if it is necessary that everything she believes is true. I mean, if you're dead, let's say, is this vacuously true? I don't know. 3. It is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled, that is, facts about what someone believes are historically settled. In other words, it is necessary that if an individual X believes that A, then it is historically settled that X believes that A. So, what does that mean? Alright, let's see. All these propositions are intuitively plausible, but together they entail a contradiction. This is the aporia of future directed beliefs. It is called the aporia of future directed beliefs because one talks about beliefs about the future. This puzzle should be interesting to anyone who philosophizes about the concept of belief, infallibility, historical necessity, the open future, and similar concepts about the relationship between such notions. To justify claims 1 through 3 is inconsistent, but that the sentences in this set are intuitively plausible. We shall first say a few more words about 1 to 3 and express these propositions in symbols. Filled in diamond A, so we've got black diamond A says that it's possible that A. Black square B says that it is necessary that A. White box A, so this is black box A, this is white box A, says that it is historically settled, that A, and white diamond A says that it is historically possible, open that A. And BCA says that C believes that A, and F of A says it will take some time in the future to be the case that A. The IC says that C is infallible. I is a predicate. So it's the IC is the infallibility of C. So for C to believe A represents a future-directed belief if A is about the future. Let P be an atomic sentence, then C believes F of P is a future-directed belief. So C believes P about is going to happen in the future. All other symbols are interpreted in the standard way. 1 to 3 can now be formalized as follows. Okay, this sentence is number 1. This is the logic that represents the thing that we just read. It is possible that there is an individual X such that X is infallible, and there is a proposition A such that X believes that it will be the case that A sometime in the future, and is not historically settled that it will be the case that A sometime in the future. Okay, so this person is infallible. It's not currently settled about what the future, but since they're infallible, doesn't that imply that it is settled? We'll find out. So note that 1 only says that it is possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. This proposition does not entail that there actually is anyone who is infallible. This is what I mean when I was saying maybe this is vacuously true because they're dead. The first quantifier varies over individuals, and the second over propositions or sentences. So that's interesting. So this is talking about the belief of X, and then we've also got there is some A. Okay. All right. So this sentence says that there is a proposition A such that X believes that it will sometime in the future be the case that A, and it is not historically settled that it will be sometime in the future be the case that A. Some things about the future are historically settled, for example, that it will or will not rain here tomorrow. But some things seem to be historically open, for example, that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. I mean, why do you believe that the rain is different from Germany winning the World Cup? I mean, is Brazil in the World Cup? Like, seriously. Why are those two things kind of different? I'm not entirely sure. Okay, but maybe some people believe this. It is now historically possible that Germany will win the next World Cup, and it is historically possible that Germany will not win the next World Cup, or so it seems. But how is that? What's this historical possibility mean? Is it this isn't metaphysical possibility, is it? Is it like physical? Because the rain tomorrow seems like it might. If you have you think that sort of the physics is closed, then you think, well, the physics determines whether it's going to rain. But if you think the physics will completely determine whether it's going to rain, might not the physics also completely determine how the World Cup will come out? I don't know, but I'm a little wary about this. Okay, if X believes that Germany will win the next World Cup in football and is not historically settled that Germany will win the next World Cup in football, then this formula is true. Intuitively, the formula just says that it is possible that there is some proposition of this kind that someone who is infallible believes. This certainly appears to be possible. Again, I'm a little worried about what the notion of possible is here. Is this metaphysical possibility? Is it logical possibility? These aren't exactly the same things. And if you're talking about physical possibility, where you're saying the weather is fixed based on the current physics of the day, the current state of the world of the day, based on the laws of physics, then this is physical possibility in one case, but not physical possibility in the other case. So, interesting. All right, so now we've got these black box here. So for second one, this is number 2. It is necessary that for every individual X is infallible if and only if it is necessary for every proposition A. If X believes A, then A. So yeah, if you're infallible and you believe it, then it's in some sense you can get rid of the belief. If X believes A, then A. So this is just from belief to truth in some sense. 2, simply is a definition of what we mean to be infallible. Yeah, obviously 2 in itself does not entail that there's anyone who is infallible. The first quantifier in 2 varies over individuals, and the second over propositions or sentences. So I mean, if you plug God into this, and if God believes it, then obviously that'll hold true. Of course, you'd argue about is this the sort of God you actually think exists or whatnot. But I mean, it's this sentence, this basically it makes sense. This concept of infallibility, I guess, is what I'm saying. All right, 3. This formula It is necessary that for every individual X and for every proposition A, if X believes A, then it is historically settles that X believes A. See, again, with the historically settled, what kind of historical? Is metaphysical possibility or historical possibility? What does this historical actually mean here? But let's see what the author says. 3 is intuitively plausible. As soon as someone believes something, it seems to be historically settled that she believes this thing. Yeah, it seems to be a fact that she believes the thing as soon as you say she believes it, or she does believe it. If this is not the case, then it's possible that there's someone who believes something, even though it is not historically settled that she believes it. But this is intuitively implausible. Note that box Bx of A, like so necessarily, X believes A, and 3 says that it is historically settled that X believes that A, not that it is absolutely necessary that X believes that A. So this is the difference between historical and sort of absolute metaphysical necessity here. Alright, so this other formula does not hold. It is possible that there is someone who believes that A, even though it is not absolutely necessary that she believes that A. So there's not a metaphysical necessity here. Again, note the first quantifier in 3 varies over individuals and the second over propositions or sentences. Yeah. So this the difference between just pointing out, and this does matter. This X is an individual, and this big A is a second order quantifier over other propositions, I guess you could say. And please, anyone out there, if you have questions, let me know. I know that when reading a bunch of formulas, it can be a little difficult to keep everything straight. I mean, yeah, we got a whole section on logical symbols and assumptions now. Before we establish that 1, 2, 3 entails a contradiction, we will say a few more words about the logical symbols and assumptions that are used in this paper. The black box and diamond function as absolute S5 operators in this paper, and the white box and diamond function as relative S5 operators. Black box A is true in a possible world at a moment in time if and only if A is true in every possible world at every moment in time. Black diamond A is true in a possible world at every moment in time if and only if A is true in some possible world at some moment in time. Since the black box and black diamond stand for absolute necessity and possibility respectively, it is obvious that they are S5 operators. The white box is true in a possible world at W at a moment in time if and only if A is true in every possible world that is still historically accessible from W at T. White diamond A is true in a possible world W at a moment in time if and only if A is true at some possible world that is historically accessible from W at T. In other words, we can say that W prime is historically accessible from W at T if and only if W prime is still possible given the history of W and the laws of nature that hold in W in a tree-like structure where W and W prime have not yet branched off at T. So that means, I guess, like one of them happens at every world all the time, and the other one, it means once certain things happen, like you already got this, it's accessible, so once it happens in this one place, it is going to get tough and complex. We need your thoughts, please. We're trying. So this one is saying with the clear boxes, the white boxes. Basically, once it happens once, then it's historically accessible. So once this you have this historical spot, you got like a fixed point. After that, it becomes a necessity, but not necessarily before that, I guess, because it's historically accessible. So you can go back to like some point, and from that point on, I guess it's there's a necessary. It needed to exist in all the worlds. See, it's still historically accessible from A, so it's somewhere prior in the prior history, and once it's there forever. Okay. All right. So hence it follows that. So given this interpretation, historical accessibility relation is an equivalence relation. That is, it is reflexive, symmetric, and transitive at every moment in time. Hence, it follows that white box and diamond function as relative S5 operators. Black box A is stronger than white box, and white diamond is stronger than black diamond. Black box entails white box A, and white diamond A does not entail. White diamond A entails black diamond A. However, the converse does not hold. So white box does not entail black box of A, and black diamond does not entail white diamond of A. Obviously, black box of A entails box A, and these are the normal rules. You can throw boxes in front of things there, but you can throw the stronger version in front. So like you can throw the weaker version in front. So white box A does not entail the black box, white box of A, and white diamond A does not entail black box, white diamond of A. Okay, so basically you can add the boxes and diamonds that you normally would, given you're using the weaker version of them. And you can't make stronger sentences out of weaker sentences. Note that the logical system that is used in this paper is consistent both with the existence and non-existence of contingent propositions of the following kind. You can have possibly and possibly not. Hey Aristotle, what's up? How you doing? Oh yeah, well have fun with your Bible, boys. And let's see if this works. There we go. Everyone go check out Aristotle. He's got a great stream. Philosophizes and plays video games at the same time. It's impressive. Okay, so we've got these sort of you can possibly have something and possibly not that thing. And same thing with the white diamonds, black diamonds and white diamonds. Okay, so C believes A is true in a world W if and at a world W at some time T, if and only if A is true in all possible worlds that are doxastically accessible from W T for the individual C. The truth condition for the other formulas are standard. And this just says, look, if someone believes something, then those worlds have to be accessible to them because they believe it. This is probably going to be the infallible person, and so that world has to be accessible to them because they believe something that is going to be necessarily true in one of these ways. And so if it's necessarily true, then that means they have to be able to get to that world. I mean, the world has to be possible for them to. The world has to be able to do that. Okay, the inconsistency argument. We are now in a position to show that 1, 2, and 3 entails a contradiction. We assume that all sentences in 1, 2, and 3 are true in some possible world at world W, world W0 at some point in time T0, and derive a contradiction. In the derivation, all these formulas are the standard for propositional logic, predicate logic, and modal logic. E is an abbreviation of elimination, I for introduction, so E stands for conjunction elimination, and conjunction I for conjunction introduction. We've got triple bar is an abbreviation for the possible world. 2 is historically so the accessibility relation. That's fine if you guys know this stuff. And intuitively, all this stuff says that A is true in a possible world at W0 at time T0, etc. All right, and we're going to assume that they didn't mess up their proof. We will call this derivation the inconsistency argument. Clearly, 24 is a contradiction, hence 1, 2, and 3 entail a contradiction. It follows from that 1, 2, and 3 is inconsistent. Accordingly, at least one sentence in 1, 2, and 3 must be false. This fact justifies the claim that 1, 2, and 3 is an aporia. I mean, I'm not going to go through this right now. I will take, like I said, I'm going to take their word. The issue for me is that there's, like I was saying earlier, there's different kinds of possibility we're talking about, different modals. And I mean, it shows up, of course, in the formulas because we've got white boxes and we got black boxes. We got black diamonds and we got white diamonds. And so I'm thinking that these white diamonds and black diamonds and the white boxes and black boxes, that there's going to be some, it's not so clear that you've actually only got two different kinds of things. Because when you're talking about, well, there's infallibility in a person's beliefs, but then also the world is metaphysically required to be some way. Is mind control cipher? Yeah. Kind of. It's like if you declare something infallible, what is the necessity of the world if someone's belief is infallible? I don't understand what that kind of infallible necessity really means. So I suspect there is a, hey Luffness, how you doing? That's where I suspect there is going to be a bit of an issue going on, because you've got the meaning of infallibility and the meaning of historical necessity or physical necessity and metaphysical necessity all interacting here. And so even though we've got they've shown that there is a contradiction given only these symbols, there is some sort of conceptual thing going on there that, I mean, That's what my suspicion is kind of working for here. Yeah, so feel free to ask questions. What's going on is we've got some inconsistency argument, some sort of contradiction or something that's gone wrong in Aporia, talking about when someone has a belief about the future, and that there might be a problem with believing things about the future. Okay. So 2. Arguments for the sentences in the Aporia. I have asserted that the propositions... Yeah, it's crazy, leftness, I know. I have asserted that the propositions in the Aporia of future-directed beliefs are intuitively plausible. However, a skeptic might argue that this is not enough to take the puzzle seriously. To show that we should take it seriously, we must have some independent reasons for the sentences in 1, 2, and 3. We cannot rely simply on our intuitions. Therefore, I will consider some arguments for 1 and 3, which seem more problematic than 2. Since 2 is just a definition of the concept of infallibility, I will not consider an argument for this proposition in this section. However, I will say something more about it in section 3. Yeah, I mean, 2, I agree, is no real... Maybe there's something to be said about it, but it seems like a reasonable definition of what it means to be infallible. 2.1. Arguments for 1. It is possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. Is it possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled? The following argument, which I will call the conceivability argument, suggests that proposition 1 is valid and true and valid. Conceivability argument. It is conceivable that there is an infallible individual who believes that something will be the case even though it is not historically settled that it will be the case. So the person somehow has knowledge of the future that is perfect knowledge, but it isn't historically. That knowledge has nothing to do with being historically settled. See, I don't know what that means, but like I don't understand how you get such an infallible individual, but okay, I kind of got the concept. Alright, hence, 1. It is possible that there's someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. If conceivability implies possibility, then the conceivability argument is valid. However, it is not obvious that this is the case. Nevertheless, it seems reasonable to say that if someone is conceivable, then at least we have a prima facie reason to believe that it is possible. So if you can think of it, well, you think it might not be ridiculous. Okay, that's fine. So the conceivability argument seems to give some support to 1. The following scenario suggests that I is true. Imagine an infallible individual called Sophia. Okay, their wisdom. I mean, I would this is the exact point where I duck out. I have no conceivability. My intuitions do not go this way, but that's okay. Suppose that Sophia believes that Germany will win the next World Cup in football and that it is not historically settled that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. Then there is a proposition A such that Sophia believes that it will be the case that A, even though it is not historically settled that A. So she believes both things, that it's both not historically settled and that Germany will win the World Cup. Interesting. Okay, so she believes 2 things infallibly, and those 2 things don't actually match up. So maybe she's just inconsistent. That's weird. Furthermore, since Sophia is infallible, there is an individual X such that X is infallible, and there is a proposition A such that X believes that it will be the case at A, even though it is not historically settled that it will be the case at A. This scenario is conceivable. Clearly, it is logically possible. Hence, 1 is true, and since 1 is true, we have at least some reason to accept. Since I is true, we have at least some reason to accept 1. Now, here's the question. Can you have beliefs that are inconsistent? And are these beliefs inconsistent? Because if you have inconsistent beliefs, then you're not in classical logic anymore. But, it might be very weird. But, we can believe things. So there's something going on here. You have to have some sort of background assumption that everything Sophia believes is consistent. In a strong sense. I don't know. But, again, I'm not entirely certain about what it is to be historically settled. But okay. We're assuming that such a person is possible, that when she believes it, it comes true, even though there's nothing in history that would say so. 2.3. For arguments for 3. It is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled. Is it true that it is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled? I will first consider an intuitive argument for proposition 3, then I will consider a semantic argument. 2.4. The intuitive argument. If 3 is not true, it seems that what someone believes might depend on what will turn out to be the case in the future, which seems unreasonable. Yeah, what you believe doesn't matter, doesn't depend on something in the future. You have to believe on what you know now, not the future possibility, not the future state of the world. Your belief today does not depend on the future state of the world. What you believe depends on all your history and what you have thought about. Suppose, for example, it is not now historically settled that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. It is now historically possible that Germany will win, and it is now historically possible that it is not the case that Germany will win. Suppose, furthermore, that Sophia is infallible. Then, if 3 is not true, we can say that it is not now historically settled whether Sophia believes that Germany will win or not. If Germany will win, then it will be true. Then, when they have won, it was shown the case now that Sophia believed that Germany would win, and if Germany will not win, then it would be true. Then, when it is settled that they did not win, then it was the case now that Sophia did not believe that Germany would win. However, at this moment in time, whether Sophia believes that Germany will win or not is not historically settled. There is simply no way to tell for sure whether Sophia believes that Germany will win or not. This seems to be a strange position. Is it not at least possible for us to know for sure what we believe about historically contingent affairs in the future? Examples such as this clearly suggest that 3 is true. However, this is not the only possible argument for 3. There are actually several possible semantic arguments for this proposition. I will now mention one such argument, which I will call the semantic argument. So basically, it would mean that if Sophia was infallible, she couldn't know her own beliefs until they actually happened. And that's why this argument, is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled, but it basically is saying, look, you have to have access. Is sort of the introspection thesis, that you have to be able to introspect your own beliefs so that you can do them, and they don't depend on something happening in the future. You have to be able to introspect them and not wait for the world to actually show up to then know what you believed, because that would be a little strange. Alright, semantic argument. Consider the following condition. C. If the possible world W prime is historically accessible from the possible world W at the time T, and the possible world W double prime is doxastically accessible from W at T for the individual C, then W prime is doxastically accessible from W at T for C. Assume that C holds. Then we can show that 3 is valid. Here's the proof. Okay. Let's just see if this proof makes any sense for me to read out. No, it doesn't. Basically, this is just saying, look, if you've got, here's you now, and here's you in the past, over here, then if there's some W in between, then it's in between, and you have to be able to get to both of them, if, there's W prime is here. So, or if the other way around. If, here's you now, and here's W prime in the past, and then here is W double prime in the past there. So if you can get to here, then you can also get to there. You're just making a transitivity. You can just go along, or you're stuck, or it's in between. So, okay. So blah blah blah, and so they have. This is just basically, it's following from the logic of accessibility of worlds. Why does that matter here? Oh, this is yeah, since you don't have to wait for the future to happen in the past, then you have to be able to have accessible beliefs. Okay. This argument in this section clearly establishes that should we take the aporia of the future-directed beliefs seriously? Is there any way to solve this problem? I will now consider some possible solutions. Some possible solutions. In this section, I will investigate some possible solutions to the aporia of future-directed beliefs. I will focus on 5 attempts. I will first mention 2 other possibilities. One way to avoid the problem is to accept the idea that there are true contradictions. Yeah, this is the inconsistent beliefs before. A so-called dialethist, which believes that some sentences are both true and false, might accept that it is possible to derive a contradiction from 1, 2, and 3, and yet think all sentences in the sentence are true. If there are true contradictions, this might be perfectly acceptable. However, this Excuse me. However, this solution is extreme. Dialethism is a very controversial thesis, and most dialethist will probably agree that not every contradiction is genuinely true. So even a dialethist might reject the claim that all sentences in 1, 2, and 3 are true. I know dialethists, that's what they would say. They would say this is not a good candidate for dialethism. It might be, but it's very unlikely. And they would say this is not, like, if you think you want to just go dialethic for this, they'd think you were just sort of petty, basically, because this is not like some major I think they'd say this is not like significant enough reason to change all of your logic for this one thing. They would be a little confused as your willingness to just accept contradictions for this sort of weird problem about future directed beliefs. Another response is to reject some of the inference rules that are used in the inconsistency argument. If some of these rules are not valid, it is perhaps no longer possible to derive contradictions from 1, 2, and 3. Still, this solution is also quite problematic since all the rules that are used in the deduction are standard. It is doubtful that this kind of response is the most effective. A dialethist Marshall is someone who accepts that there are some propositions that are both true and false. That is, the world is such a case in some places that one sentence is both true and false. The clearest, simplest example is of the liar paradox. Say, I am lying to you right now. And if I am lying to you right now, that means, is that sentence true or false? Well, if I'm lying to you, then it's true. But then it's a lie, so it must also be false. And then if it's also false, then it's true that I'm lying to you, so it's true. And then it's also false. So the liar sentence is an example of someone who just says, okay, it's true. And they're just going to bite the bullet and say it's both true and false, and that's the way the world is. That certain things have both truth and falsity. And so that's kind of what's going on here. And so if you're a dialethist, it's allowable for you to just say, yeah, it's all true. Like, that's not a problem for you. You're just like, okay, this is just one of the cases. Yeah, here in New York, there's a guy named Graham Priest. He is the high priest of contradictions. I know Graham. That's basically who I know. Graham is actually, you may disagree with his dialethism, but he is a competent philosopher, and he is an extremely long history of defending this. And so if you think you have something new to say on the topic, I can almost guarantee you that there's like a published response that is detailed and interesting and probably better than you could write talking about it. So yeah, and like I said, the people I've talked to Graham about this stuff and other people, most of the time they would not accept a potential dialethia on these grounds. Like, you could do it, but it just seems a little it would be petty. There's not a good enough reason. And the same thing for rejecting the inference rules. You're rejecting your logic based on... So this is a metaphysical thesis about the world, that there are things that are both true and false. And then this is to reject... The second part here is to reject your logic. Again, why would you go about rejecting your logic for this one sort of very... I mean, this may be a very important point that is being brought up in this article, but is it so important that you're going to change all of your logic? Probably not. These are sort of these solutions are overkill, that they're just introducing, I guess, to show that they're overkill. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to continue. If we accept all the rules in the inconsistency argument, then we can derive a contradiction from 1, 2, and 3. And if there are no true contradictions, at least the kind of sentence in the set must be false. There are 7 possible solutions of this kind to the aporia of future directed beliefs. We can reject all the sentences in the set. 1 possibility, we can reject 2 in the set and accept 1 sentence. 3 possibilities, or we can reject 1 sentence in the set and accept the rest 3 possibilities. I will focus on the last possibility. In particular, I will discuss 3 solutions that reject 1 solution that rejects 2, and 1 solution that rejects 3. Okay, so basically they're going to just run through all the different combinations in some sense. Solution 1, reject number 2. It is possible to solve the puzzle, and feel free to keep asking questions. It is possible to solve the puzzle by rejecting proposition 2. However, this solution seems to be problematic since 2 is simply a definition of the concept of infallibility. Nevertheless, let me mention one attempt of this kind. If we use the following alternative definition of infallibility, we can block the inconsistency argument and avoid contradiction. Formula 2 prime. It is necessary for every x is infallible if and only if everything x believes is true. According to this definition, someone can be infallible in some possible world at some moment of time without being infallible in every possible world at every moment in time. Okay. Suppose we use 2 prime and not 2 to define the concept of infallibility. Then step 21 in the inconsistency argument does not go through anymore. But even if we use 2 prime to define the concept of infallibility, it seems that we can use 2 to define a new concept we call essential infallibility. Then we can replace infallibility in 1 and 2 by essential infallibility and derive a contradiction again. Therefore, it is doubtful that this is a plausible solution to the aporia. So let's turn to the next solution. Okay, yeah, you can weaken your concept of infallibility, but people are still going to accept the stronger one. So if you weaken it too much, it won't matter. That's fair. Solution 2, reject 3. According to the second solution, we should reject 3. It is not the case that it is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled. If we reject 3, it is not possible that there is someone who believes something even though it is not historically settled that she believes this. That is, the following sentence will be true. All right, that thing there. This might be true if what we believe can depend on what happens in the future. This idea sounds intuitively implausible, but on second reflection, perhaps this proposition is not so unreasonable after all. Some propositions certainly do seem to be historically open. The proposition that Germany will win the next World Cup in football appears to be open. It is not now historically settled whether this proposition is true or not. If Germany will win the World Cup, we can say that the proposition that Germany will win the World Cup was true now when they have actually won. Yeah, you can do it in retrospect, but can you give yourself beliefs in the future about can you give your past self beliefs? Probably not. However, if Germany will not win the next World Cup, we can say that the proposition that Germany will win the World Cup was not true now once it is settled that they did not win. We cannot now know for sure if this proposition is true or not. We have to wait and see who is going to win to decide its truth value. Perhaps it is the same with propositions about our beliefs. Perhaps we can believe something even though it is not historically settled that we believe it. If this is true, we can avoid the aporia of future directed beliefs. Of course, if we reject 3, we must also reject C, since C entails 3. If our beliefs are not historically settled, this seems to be exactly what we should do. So you're tying your current beliefs to something that happens in the future, which is very, very weird. And that would mean you can't actually say you believe anything until you actually know if it happened or not. A potential problem with this solution is that there seem to be important and relevant differences between the proposition that Germany will win the next World Cup in football and the proposition that an individual C believes that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. If the future is open, we would expect the first proposition is not historically settled, since this proposition tells us something about the future. However, the second proposition does not seem to tell us anything about the future. It only tells us something about what someone believes about the future. Hence, we would expect this proposition to be historically settled. Our current beliefs, whether they are about the future or not, do not seem to depend on the future. Since we can derive a contradiction from the 1, 2, and 3, we might have to give up these intuitions. But meanwhile, let us see if there are any other possible solutions to the aporia. Solution 3. Reject 1 and assume that it is not possible that the future is open. According to the third solution, we should reject 1. It is not the case that it is possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. Yeah, now we finally got the infallibility again. If we reject 1, all an infallible individual's beliefs about the future are historically settled. That is, the following sentence will be true. Alright, so this one here. According to solution 3, the reason why we should reject 1 is that it is not possible that the future is open. And since the future cannot be open, 1 must be false, for 1 entails that it is possible that the future is open. I will now show that 1 entails it is possible that the future is open. Let us call this argument the open future argument. Yeah, so this is the issue. If you're saying because the person is infallible, the future is not open, because by them believing something and their infallibility, then the future is not, it is settled. because they wouldn't be infallible otherwise. But now they're going to argue for an open future here. All right. It is possible that there's someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. It is necessary that someone who is infallible, if and only if it is necessary that everything she believes is true. Hence, O, it is possible that the future is open. That is, it's possible that there is a proposition A that it such that it will be the case that A, even though it is not historically settled, that it will be the case at A. So, settled. What does this settled mean? Like, this mixing of historically settled, and it's not like, because you could just say entailed. So in some sense, we're using logic, but then we're saying historically settled. So we've got different notions of entailment. We've got some sort of historical entailment, and then we've got logical entailment. And so there's some sort of gap in here that is being exploited by the author. I mean, maybe that's fine, but like that's just kind of the strategy that it looks like, what the strategy looks like here to me. O can be symbolized in the following way. There it is, where all the symbols are interpreted as above. Here is the deduction that shows that O follows from 1 and 2. Okay, I will take their word for it. And since here's the contradiction right here again, got yourself. Actually, no, is that contradict? Yeah. So, since f of x and not box f of x, the white box, is false at world 1 at time 1, it is either the case that f of x is false at world 1 at t1, or that not necessarily f of x is false at world 1 at t1. Both alternatives lead to a contradiction. This step in the argument follows by propositional logic, can be symbolized in the following way. I'll take your word for it. The derivation above establishes that it is not possible that 1 and 2 are true and O false. Hence O follows from 1 and 2. So if we reject the idea that the future can be open, we must also reject 1. And if we reject 1, we can avoid the contradiction that follows from the inconsistency argument. A problem with this solution is that it clearly seems to be possible that the future is open. In fact, if the dominating interpretations of modern physics are correct, then the future is open. And if the future is open, then it is certainly possible that it is open. Even if it should turn out that the future is not open, it clearly appears that to be possible that not everything that will happen is historically settled. So it seems that we should be reluctant to accept this possible solution. Yeah, I mean, I agree that like our best understanding is that not everything is settled, or that at least that could be the case. But again, we've got the like sort of the semantics of infallibility at work here, and I'm really not like I'd really have to get a more fully worked out semantics of infallibility first before I know what the difference between the necessity from infallibility and the necessity from historical contingency. What the difference is. Okay, continuing. 3.5. Solution 4. Reject 1 because it is impossible that there is someone who is infallible. Okay, so this is exactly where we're going. No, actually, that's not true. I want the semantics of infallibility, like a much more worked out understanding of how it interacts with physics. I'm not saying it's possible or impossible. I'm just saying, what does it mean? Proposition 1 entails that it is possible that there is someone who is infallible. Accordingly, if it is impossible that there is a being of this kind, 1 must be false, and if 1 is false, it does not matter that 1, 2, and 3 entails a contradiction. Hence, we can solve the aporia of future directed beliefs by rejecting 1. According to solution 4, we should reject 1 because it is impossible that there is someone who is infallible. But why should we believe this? One could try to show that infallibility entails omniscience, and then try to show that it is problematic to assume that it is possible that there is someone who is omniscient. For example, there are several arguments in the literature that suggest that the concept of omniscience is inconsistent with so-called de re and de se beliefs, with human freedom, and with the fact that there is no set of all truths. However, this argument does not succeed, since infallibility does not entail this omniscience. Someone can be infallible without being omniscient, I guess. Okay. I mean, just one failed problem with this doesn't really mean that some does not establish the possibility of infallibility. It just shows one attempted argument fails against it. Anyway, For this solution to work, we should try to show directly that the concept of infallibility is problematic. Perhaps it is possible to establish that the concept of infallibility is inconsistent, and if this concept is inconsistent, it is impossible that there is someone who is infallible. Moreover, if this is possible, we should reject one. However, until someone has actually produced such an argument that is convincing, it seems that the conceivability argument gives us prima facie good reason to believe that it is possible that there is someone who is infallible. I conclude that we should be reluctant to accept this solution, at least until someone has actually produced some convincing argument that establishes that the concept of infallibility is inconsistent. Alright, I want to just point out that's not what I said. I want to know how infallibility works, and I'm not sure that I understand that. I'm not saying it's impossible. Okay, 3.6, solution 5, and we're getting to the end, folks. Reject one and assume that an infallible individual will not have any beliefs about truth about the future that are historically contingent. Oh, so this is basically saying I'm infallible, but I just don't have any infallible beliefs. It's like, okay, yeah, everyone out there, just so you know, I'm completely infallible, but I'm not going to tell you any of my beliefs ever. So don't worry about it, but I'm infallible. Yeah. According to the fifth solution, we should again reject one. It is not the case that it is possible that there is someone who is infallible and believes something about the future that is not historically settled. However, according to this solution, the reason for rejecting one is different. According to solution 5, we reject one because we assume that an infallible individual will not have any beliefs about truths about the future that are not historically settled. An infallible being will only have beliefs about propositions about the future that are historically settled. Suppose it is not historically settled that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. Then I wonder if this person's Brazilian and just wants to say that Germany will not win the next World Cup in football like many times. I mean, that seems like the most reasonable explanation of this. Then an infallible individual will not believe that Germany will win the next World Cup in football. Such a person can still believe many things about the future that are historically settled. For example, that it will be the case that Germany will win or that Germany will not win the next World Cup, that it will be the case that 2 + 2 is 4, and that it will be the case that every bachelor is unmarried. Yet if it is not historically settled that it will be the case at A, then she will not believe that it will be the case at A. If one is false, then this formula is true. But this is compatible with the assertion that it is possible that the future is open. It is even compatible with the assertion that the future is open. So this solution is distinct from solution 3. However, if there are truths about the future that are not historically settled, then an infallible individual will not believe in such truths. Solution 5 seems to be attractive in many respects, but nevertheless, if we accept it, we have to assume that an infallible individual's beliefs about the future are very limited. She will not believe anything about the future that is not historically settled. If one is false, then this formula is true, and this seems counterintuitive. Yeah, so it would be, this is again restricting what sort of infallibility there is permissible, sort of above. And so of course you can restrict infallibility to be very narrow, and then there is no problem because the things that they're infallible about are really unimportant. But again, if you're going to understand sort of a general reading of infallibility, then you're not going to accept this solution. Okay. Conclusion. In this paper, I've introduced a new aporia, the aporia of future-directed beliefs. This puzzle contains 3 propositions. 1, it is possible that there is someone who is infallible that believes something about the future that is not historically settled. 2, it is necessary that someone is infallible if and only if it is necessary that everything she believes is true. And 3, it is necessary that all our beliefs are historically settled. Every claim in this set is intuitively plausible, and I have mentioned some interesting arguments for or against each of them. However, 1, 2, and 3 entails a contradiction, as I have discussed several different possible solutions to this aporia, and I have investigated some arguments for and against these solutions. I have focused on 5 of the most promising attempts to solve the problem. According to the first solution, we should reject 2, and according to the second, we should reject 3. According to the other 3 solutions, we should reject 1, but for different reasons. Which solution is the most plausible overall? Which one should we choose? The answer to these questions is not obvious. I'm attracted to the 5th attempt, but some of the other solutions also seem interesting to me. The third solution is intuitively very implausible and also seems to go against our current best science, and the first solution seems quite problematic. Nevertheless, the other solutions are not entirely satisfying either. The fact that it is hard to tell which solution we should choose reinforces the claim that the aporia of future directed beliefs really is an aporia. No matter how we choose to solve the aporia, it seems that we have to give up some of our intuitions. Yeah, nice paper. Oh, yeah, I guess if you have this sort of thing on in your name, you're probably German, so not Brazilian, and they just like saying, as opposed to saying that Germany might lose the World Cup, they just like saying that Germany would win the World Cup. But I understand. Okay. So I had a 50-50 shot. I should have known better. Alright, so anything else to say? Please let me know if you have questions. Again, this is sort of the argumentative strategy here is you've got different notions of historical necessity and like future necessity, and just like these different boxes are different modal understandings of ways we can understand the world, and they showed that we have these different concepts of ways things might possibly be or might necessarily be, and when you start mixing them together, you can get a trouble if you start thinking about the future at that point. So that's nice. That's kind of a nice that shows that just given two different sets of boxes and diamonds, we had the black boxes and the white boxes, the black and the white box and diamonds in this, that you can get yourself into a lot of trouble with that stuff. So that's a nice result. Again, like I'm not 100% like I'd have to see a much more filled out understanding, because just because they have two different sets of them, I don't actually think that's what was going on here. Like I think there was multiple understandings of like necessity that were working, and I don't think that they necessarily match up with what's going on. And so I think the problem is not in the suggested solutions 1 to 5. I think it's different. But if you are interested in this sort of stuff, this is a nice paper. And yeah, so that's it for now. I thank you all for watching, and yeah, and I think that'll be it for basically the stream at the moment. So you're all, of course, contradiction. No, you got it right the first time. I mean, the guy's name is Graham Priest, and this is not like I'm that clever to come up with a high priest of contradiction. I'm definitely not the first person to say such things. Yeah. You could call him famous or infamous, but I saw. Let's see where we got. Did he get referenced here? No. He's just very famous for it at this point. Okay, but yeah. So that's it for this paper.